So let's make a start. So just a couple of explanations in the moment. Today, I'm going to be talking about the competencies functionality as it sits within Totara Perform, our performance management system. Now, some of you may be using Totara Learn and or Totara Engage as well, or instead of. So we're talking about competencies as they would appear if you're using Totara Perform, whether that be a standalone installation or alongside Totara Learn and Totara Engage. So altogether, all three of the products together, we call it the Totara Talent Experience Platform. But of course, you can use these products independently or a combination of them, all three together. But just so you know what I'm talking about. Now, I'll be doing most of the demo across version 14. And the version 14, the release candidate is out, and we would expect the full release available to everyone probably this week. At this stage, it's our current goal. A few bits and pieces to tidy up now, but will be available shortly. And of course, partners have access to that release candidate. So I'll be doing the demo on our release candidate. But if there's any areas where I need a really populated site to show something, say around reporting, I might skip over to my version 13 site. So start off with just what I mean by Totara Perform and what the reason for Totara Perform. Across Totara 13, so at the end of last year, we released the Totara Talent Experience Platform, with Totara Perform being a standalone or connected performance management system, with the idea that it would take on some of the functionality that you may have seen in version 12 or earlier of Totara Learn, where we had some kind of more basic performance management functionality. And we've tied that together and put it in, updated it and replaced a lot of it into Totara Perform. Now, the idea behind Totara Perform and our ongoing goal and sort of mission, I suppose, and long-term vision for Totara Perform is to create a platform, a performance management and development platform that encourages and supports continuous improvement and continuous performance management processes. And the way we do that is through a variety of methods, but it also, those methods allow us to support the more traditional once a year or twice a year appraisal, or this continuous process, which is more regular check-ins. And there's a lot of theories behind why a continuous process is better for both staff and manager as well as the organisation, but we can accommodate one or the other or a combination across Totara Perform. So I'm not talking about performance activities today, I'll be talking about competency management, which of course all ties together. So what do I mean by competency management? Or more importantly, what am I going to be talking about today? So this is essentially the agenda, introduction to competencies. I'll be showing you how you can build a framework and competencies and scales. I'll be talking about setting achievement paths. I'll be assigning competencies and tracking completion and reporting on completion and achievement across those competencies. Now, there's a lot to cover. It's a big piece of function and it's super powerful. So I will try to move pretty quickly. I am a rotter for talking too much and getting overexcited. And that's why Matt is here to keep me on track. So before I start going for it, Matt, anything I need to know?
No one's asking any questions at the moment, but if you do have a question during the webinar, please feel free just to post it in the Q&A or in the chat and we can answer them.
Great, thank you. So one of the first things I'd like to cover is just make sure that we're all on the same page. And when I talk about competencies, you'll know what I'm talking about. So first off, what are competencies? So certainly within the Totara platforms, we define competencies as the various skills, behaviours and knowledge that your team or your staff or your learners need or should have to be competent, safe, efficient, effective, and hopefully happy in their work. And competency management is that the action of creating, updating, assigning, tracking, and reporting on those competencies. Now, a lot of people get tied up with the term competency or competent. or competency. And just a note that across all of the Totara products, you can change the language. So if you don't want it to be competencies, you can change it to skills or knowledge bank or behaviours map, whatever you like. So this is just the default language, but you can very easily change that across the system. So you can use the terminology that works for you and works for your users. So competency frameworks. So you can have multiple frameworks. Actually, rather than talking through the slide, let's show us. So I am jumping into my 14 here, and I might skip between my 13 and 14. If you're not sure what I'm on, I'll probably tell you, but just in case, you can see that I've got 13 up here in my tab and 14 here, as much as for you as for me. So here we've got this competencies area across here. So we've got competencies, which are those skills, behaviours and knowledge, and they sit within what we call competency frameworks. And you can have any number of these frameworks that you like, and these frameworks contain individual competencies. So if I click on the strategic leadership competencies, please don't be alarmed by these notifications. That's a new feature across 14, which is extremely helpful. I just don't feel the need to fix all of these right now, but you see that I will. This is perfectly normal, and it doesn't mean anything's going wrong. It just means that these things have been set up in a demo environment rather than competencies that you would actively use in a production site. So you can see immediately that there's the hierarchical structure. In this case, that hierarchy or those parent-child relationships only go one level deep, but you can have lots of levels of hierarchy. And these are called top or parent competencies and then child competencies. And when you create these frameworks, and maybe the reason that you create this hierarchical nature is that in order to be awarded, let's say in this case, the people management competency, you might have to complete all of these child or next level competencies, for example. Now, when you create, you can create any number of frameworks, as I say, and you can create any number of competencies within these frameworks. And whether you have one competency framework or many is entirely up to you, and is really quite personal to an organisation. And your decision might be made on almost like the number of competencies that you might have. If you want to be able to find things super quickly and file them together, maybe a couple of frameworks are a better idea than one kind of big uber competency. But it's whatever works for you, and you can change it after the fact. You're not completely locked down. Excuse me. Now, creating competencies, there are two ways of doing that, and creating and updating competencies, I should say. One of them is manually, which is what we're going to go through today. But just to stress that I'm using the HR import tool. You can connect to your HR system or your competency framework system or whatever you like to create and update competencies in bulk or automatically via CSV or through a direct database connection. In this case, I'm just going to do it old school and manually. So to create a new competency, we've got a couple of new tabs here across 13 and 14. So when I create one, I need to identify that parent item. Let's say it's around people management, and we'll call it, I don't know, I've just been watching a lot of LinkedIn training. So being compassionate, it might be an item under people management. Now you can give it an ID here or not. The great thing about using an ID number is that you can then use HR import to update it and collect it. It's a unique ID, because you might have been compassionate under another framework, for example. So you can reuse names, but you can't reuse ID numbers. Now you can optionally give this competency a description. And when we go back and have a look at some of the existing frameworks I have on my demo site here, some of them have descriptions and quite detailed descriptions. And that's important for people that are assigned those competencies, so they know what that competency is about, and why it's important to them. And then ultimately through the achievements path functionality, they can see how they might achieve or obtain those competencies. Right, I'm going to, in this case, select personal development, and I'll come back to what a type is in just a second. So I've saved that item, and you'll see it now appear back on this competency page, back on my strategic competencies page. Here's that item that I've just created. Okay, I apologize for having to keep on muting. I've got a slight chest infection, which means I'm coughing a lot, so I'm trying to spare you from the coughing. So the next item, and again, just bookmarking here, I'm going to talk about scales and achievement paths, which are that scales that I just skipped over a second ago, and one of the other tabs next to linked learning was achievement paths. So a scale is the level or rating that you might achieve various levels of competence across that competency. So for example, let's go to manage competencies. You'll see here that there are 2 existing scales. If I click on those, the first one is basic competency scale, which is just an example, which is not competent with supervision, and competent. I go back a page. This is a second one, which is 4 steps to success, which is the first level is newcomer, next is on path to success, next one is competent under supervision, and next one is competent. So we can see that you can have any number of steps. You've got 3 or 4, you can have 10. And when you create a scale, you can create new ones as you like. And these will be terms or achievements that resonate with your organisation. Now you can have lots of different scales, but you can only have 1 scale per framework. So you that might be a deciding factor when you create those frameworks for these different ways of rating or providing a level against this competency. So I might call this an example, and you can see that I've just very basic input where I can do 1 value per line from most competent to least. So this is where my typing gets evaluated. So I might say achieved in progress. That out right now. So we can see that this is a 4-stage scale, for example, from most competent to least, and then again I can create a description if I so wish. Oops, I spelled that totally wrong. Lucky it's not about spelling, right? I can't let that one go. I can't look at that through the rest of the session. There we go. I'm sorry for everyone who was hurt by that poor spelling. So this is now, we've created this competency scale, and you'll notice that there's a couple of columns here, which I'm just going to very quickly talk through. So one of them is this learning plan default value. So if you're using Totara Learn alongside Totara Perform, you can utilize the functionality of learning plans. And if you're assigned a competency, then this is the value that it sits at when you're assigned it through a learning plan. So for example, you might have that as soon as you're assigned it to a learning plan, the idea is that it's immediately in progress. So that might be the default value. And you'll also see these 2 columns which are related. So there's this idea of a proficient value. So that means that you are considered to have not only achieved that, but there could be levels of achievement across that. So you notice here, there's achieved and able to train others. I would consider both of those proficient values. So I'll go into this achieved item. Oh, no, I won't. I will go into... what am I doing? Go into the, there we go, go into the scale itself. Yeah, and be able to highlight what is a proficient value. Okay, so you can have multiple proficient values as you like. Excuse me. So I can change the proficient value. In this case, I'm not going to mess around and find it. I'm going to cancel out of this page, and note that you can change those proficiency values if you so wish. Now, once you've set those scales, you can associate it with a particular framework. And you'll notice that there are some that are used, but the one that I've just created is not yet used. So those are scales. Now, the next thing I want to very quickly talk about is the types. So types are an optional field that you might attach to competencies. And these types are kind of like tags. They're a way of categorizing or finding particular competencies. It might be that people might search for particular competencies maybe in their learning plan and go, I need to work on management, or I have focused on healthcare, or I really want to focus on personal development this time. And they can see all the relative competencies based on those types. It could be that you don't use types at all. Perfectly valid. What's nice about these types is that you can attach custom fields or custom information to these types. So let's say you might have the soft skill type. You might create a custom field so that when you add a competency that has a certain type, you can attach a different additional information to it. So it could be a soft skill, which might be personal versus professional. That might be a drop-down value that you create as a custom field. Varied use across the subscriber network that I've seen. Some people use types religiously, some folks don't use it at all. It's only if you need to attach additional information or additional ways for folks to find competencies that you might use it. All right, Matt, while I take another sip of water and stop choking, any questions?
No, we don't have any questions at the moment. I just wanted to highlight at the start of the session, I've added a link to an academy course where you can go and have a look at the features that Meredith's talking about today. And I hope you've had a glass of water.
I have, thank you for buying me some time. I was very much struggling there. And this is why I haven't been into the office, folks, because of this nasty cough. Okay, so jumping back a step here. The next thing I want to talk about is achievement paths. And to do that, I'm going to jump into one of these strategic leadership competencies that notice that they have achievement paths need review. And essentially this means is that you've created the competency, but there's no way for folks to actually achieve these competencies. So I'm going to pick, being compassionate. I've just created that one. And you'll see that I've got my general items, and then I've got linked courses and achievement paths. So linked courses is something that you may be familiar with if you've used Totara Learn 12 or earlier, that you can create a competency and you can link courses to those competencies. And it might be a one-to-one relationship, or it could be many-to-one. So I'm just going to, without it making any sort of sense, just add a bunch of courses. And notice that they can be mandatory or not. So I'm going to add those 5 courses as linked courses. The idea is that if you complete those 5 courses, you achieve this competency. And the achievement that you would create, that you would meet would be the lowest level of proficiency in that scale. So achieved, for example, versus able to train others. The next thing that you can do is set how you might achieve this, another way of achieving this competency. And these are called achievement paths. And this is new to Totara Perform across Totara 13. And you'll see that there's a new option here, which is brand spanking new in Totara 14. I'm just going to quickly talk through these options. So achievement path is the way to achieve or to achieve a level of proficiency in a particular competency based on that scale. So there's, I'm going to talk about manual rating and criteria-based path. Learning plan is there to allow backwards compatibility for competencies that are previously linked to learning plans in Totara Learn. Note that if you're running Totara Perform 13, then you also need Totara Learn to link competencies via learning plans. If you're using it independently, this simply wouldn't appear. The next thing is manual rating. And this is where an actual rating by individuals associated with someone like a self, the manager and appraiser can provide a rating. So giving a value on that scale to that individual. So in this case, I want 3 different people to rate this particular be compassionate competency. So I need a rating from all of them in order to have a rating. Now, in terms of the, if the individual gives themselves a great, like able to train others rating, but the manager or appraiser isn't quite so convinced, you can take a prioritized approach to how the path is rated. So who should provide the final rating. The other thing you can do, and this will make more sense when I add an item here, is this criteria-based paths. So this is where you can say on each scale of the achievement, what does the individual have to do? So in this case, this is the 4-step scale, which is newcomer on path to success, competent under supervision, and competent. And I can add a series of tasks or items to complete to achieve that level. So you can see that the criteria can be just on assignment. So as soon as I am assigned this Be Compassionate competency, I'm awarded the level of newcomer, and that makes a lot of sense. So I'll move on to the next one. And you notice that I've got the ability to have linked courses. So those courses that we linked just a moment ago, you can add those courses as another level on the path of success. Now, there were 5 courses across that particular, I had linked this particular competency. So maybe I only really want them to complete 2 of the 3. And notice that I've got an and option. So I can actually stack different criteria for achieving these different levels. So in this case, this is making sense to me. So I've got on achievement, on activation, I've achieved newcomer. On a path to success, I just need to complete 2 of those 5. Maybe competent under supervision, I might allow for the final 3 of those courses. And maybe if this was rather than competent, maybe the able to train others, I might link another course that sits within the Totara Learn platform. It could be proficiency in other child competencies or proficiency in any other competencies. So I can mix and match what I need to do in order to achieve this level of competency or level of proficiency in this case for this particular competency. So to keep it simple, I'm just going to say a different course. No, that's actually not what I want to do. To add a other course, there we go. And once I've selected that, I need to add a course. So then I would browse the course catalog. I'm going to select these 2 and say that they need to complete all. So once again, they are assigned the competency, assigned to they achieve newcomer. They complete 2 of the 5 courses they need to on a path to success. They achieve the last 3 of their linked courses. They are competent under supervision. And then for the final level of competency, it can be complete all of these other courses. Now, this is a fairly complex achievement path. It could be a 2 scale, like have you completed everything or have you not? It's entirely up to you. Or it can be more complex, and you can use these and options to extend out what people need to do. I should stress that this is the most complicated thing to describe across competencies, so it's downhill from here. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that now we've got 2 ways of achieving this particular competency. So we've got this, again, overall rating calculation, and we've got 3 options here. One is the highest. So if the individual is rated by the appraiser manager himself, maybe just competent under supervision, but then the individual goes ahead and completes these courses, that would give them the highest value, which is competent, and they would be awarded that. The other option is latest. So what have they done most recently? So maybe they completed these courses and everything last year or 2 years ago. They previously were competent, but things change maybe after a couple of years, a year and a half of lockdown, maybe they've not demonstrating compassion for whatever reason, just not being around people. So they need a refresher. And maybe that is picked up on by the manager or even the individual themselves. So they might give a lower rating so that they maybe are competent under supervision or even a path to success in this example. So what is the latest rating or value that they've achieved? And finally is prioritized. And what we can do here is we switch on this editing option. And I can just drag and drop and reprioritize these around. So for me, it would actually make a little bit more sense that manual rating would be first, so that even if the individual completed all those courses, it's ultimately down to maybe the manager to observe them demonstrating those behaviours, to say, yeah, you've actually achieved that, or you should be on a different scale or a different level on that scale. But this might be that they get an initial rating, and then they can go through that training, and that might motivate them to complete that criteria-based path. Or for me personally, it just makes a little bit more sense that you can book learn and you can study and be demonstrating those behavior skills and knowledge is probably more important, or for your manager certainly, than completing courses. So that's that page. As I say, this is the most complicated thing to get your head around. Hopefully I have described it, but are there any questions there, Matt?
Yeah, so just a little dramatic pause there, sorry. Can you complete competencies as an administrator, or can you only do this if you're a user or a manager or an assessor, for example?
Yeah, you can go ahead as an administrator. You can do whatever you like across the system. So you can add ratings on behalf. You can change people's settings change people's ratings as you need. Yeah.
And another question, can you link evidence in the evidence bank to complete a competency?
Good question. Not currently at this stage, but that is something that we are considering heavily for future releases of Perform.
And final question, is there a way to either bulk add or template achievement paths on the horizon? The functional, sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying that's a really good idea. Please go ahead.
I was saying the functionality here is really, really good, but it can be a little bit time consuming sometimes. That's the question.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. At this stage, I'm not aware of that, but I don't have complete oversight on the product roadmap for Perform. But thank you for the suggestion. If you haven't done so already, please do post in the forums, or log an idea ticket in the support desk if you're a partner. And yeah, please basically remind us that this is a really great idea. So thank you for the suggestion. At this stage, no immediate plans, but that's not to say that it won't be in future releases. Because our release cycle is twice yearly, we do now have an opportunity to push through these changes a little faster than we have in previous years when we've released once a year or once every 2 years.
And would you like one more?
Yeah.
Can you link certifications to complete a competency?
Not directly, but if you have a course that is the final course in a recertification as one of the required courses, you would automatically or by default then complete that competency. So there's a little fudge around that you can make. Okay, so I'm going to move on to assigning competencies. So this is, again, a nice placeholder text. So I am going to shift over back to my demo site, and I'm going to move to this competency assignments area. Now this page is a little slow to load just because this is a sandbox site that sits in New Zealand. So it's waking everyone up to work. So this page here is kind of a page that's split in two. The first page that you see is actually managing or reviewing existing competency assignments. Now, an assignment is who was assigned or linked or associated with a particular competency, who's been given this competency to achieve or to meet. The other area is under this create assignments, where it's where you create new assignments, where you link new individuals or groups of people to a particular competency. But just quickly on this page, because to start with, there's quite a bit going on. So you can have different types of assignment. You can have active assignments, so that an item has been assigned to an individual. So in this case, you see that Lisa Lerner has assigned herself this particular competency, agile development, and it's active. She's assigned it. She's ready to go. The other option that we have is archived assignments, and you can see I've got a little archive. Well, that bounces up, that's nice. Archived option, and that means that you're essentially removing that competency from an individual. Now that might, or a group. Now there's various implications in terms of archiving or removing a competency for someone, or what happens if they're assigned by maybe audience or organisation or position, and their new position that they've moved to doesn't have that associated competency. Now you can choose how the system behaves in that occasion. So you would head over to competencies, and then under competency settings here, you've got a couple of options in terms of how the system will behave if an individual is removed from a competency. So you've got some choices. So back to this page. So those are the active and the archived. Then the final option is draft. So what you can do is, and what we'll see in a moment, is that you can create an assignment, but you don't activate it, you save it. And maybe it's because, well, there's lots of reasons why you might have a draft competency assignment. It could be that a number of people are applying for a new role and they're going to need a new competency, or for a new project, and only a few people are ended up selected for that role or for that project. So then you would remove the remainder that weren't selected and assign that competencies to that group. It could be that there's a legal change coming in. So on a certain date, things change. So you get all ready and super prepared. You assign those competencies, but you don't activate them yet. So that on the day that the law changes or a new policy comes into place, they can all be then assigned at once. Now, the other thing on this page is what's called assignment type. So there's a couple of different ways that you can assign competencies by position and organisation, which for those of you that have used Total Learn 12 or earlier, you'll be aware that you could link competencies by someone's position and organisation. You can also now add them by set or dynamic audience. You can have them individually assigned. So this is someone from, what I'm about to do is individually pick on one individual and assign them one or many competencies. And when you create the competencies, if you were quick enough, you would have seen on my screen that you can also choose whether people can self-assign or be assigned by maybe their manager. So they'll be directly assigned a competency. So if that's enabled for a particular competency, then the self-assigned and directly assigned option will be available. And then there's individual, which is where a previous assignment has been archived, which we'll talk about in a moment, and where the option that you selected under those competency settings allow people for continuously achieving or a continuous achievement tracking. So this is a kind of the exception where someone's been archived but continues to work on that competency will be available here. So in this case, I want to then move over to this create assignments option. So you see that the page is very, very similar. When a few people get confused between the two, so just make sure that you're in create assignments if you're looking for that. Got me too to start with, so because this page is quite similar. So here are all of our competencies, and so this represents all of the frameworks and all the competencies within those frameworks that we have in the site. So I'm going to, oh, that's kind of a fun one. Speaking in public is one competency, and let's say serving the customer is another. So I can pick these items as I like. You notice that speaking in public doesn't have any assignees just yet, but there is one user group assigned to serving the customer. And if I click on that, I can see in this case, the user group is just one person, which is poor old Lisa Lerner, who we're going to pick on in a moment. She's always busy. So I've picked those two competencies. In this case, I am going to assign by an individual, but you'll see that I can also assign by group or a combination of the two. So I'm going to choose Lisa, because I'm going to log in as Lisa as a moment. So you can have multiple people added individually, and say if you want to make it more automated, you can have a dynamic audience, or if you want it based on what the person does and where they do it, use position and organisation or a combination of the two. So now I've added everyone, in this case just one lonely person here. I can create assignment. So this is where I can choose whether it is draft or not. So if I just click yes now, it will be draft. If I click activate, then it will be active. And that's all there is to it. So obviously doing it and why you would do it very different questions. So how you use competencies across your organization very much differs per organization. There are plenty of resources across our site. In fact, I'm going to, in a couple of slides' time, point to an ebook around performance management that I recommend you all look at. So here we go. Because I reminded you, I've remembered. So before we move on to tracking competencies, I'm just going to have a very brief intermission. And there we go, poll 2. There we go. I just would like, again, completely anonymous, just wondering if you're considering upgrading to Totara 14. As it is out shortly, it would be nice to know what you guys are thinking. And this also gives me a wonderful opportunity to take a sip of water. Alrighty. So looking at results as they're rolling in, there is quite a split. Brilliant. So just leave that open for a few more seconds. So for the most part, most folks are, yes, they're looking at 14, but not straight away. They're looking for a wait for a couple of months. I guess those are the results we expected. While we love everyone to jump onto the latest version to take advantage of the new features, we appreciate that for some organizations in terms of just the change management and the software and any costs or time involved, it's not something that everyone can just do overnight. But it is great to see that there are some folks who are ready to jump straight in. So thank you so much for that poll. I will now close that. Any questions, Matt?
No, so we're not getting any questions currently, but if you do have any, feel free to add them now.
Okay. So we are on the home stretch. So tracking competencies. So this is how both learners and managers see how people, or how they and their staff are progressing in terms of achieving those competencies. So, actually, I'm going to take a step back. I just realized I forgot to highlight a really exciting new feature across a Totara 14. So I'm just going to take a step back. I apologize. I was so excited about that sip of water that I forgot. One new feature across Totara 14, which you may not be aware of, is this edit proficiency value by assignment. This is really nice. So when we created those scales, we set those proficiency values, or in my case, we didn't because I was desperately choking. But you would ordinarily set your proficiency values or values across your competency scale. What you can do is change that for each group or individual that's assigned to that competency. So what that means in real terms is that maybe you have a competency around agile, let's say communication, and maybe the head of communication needs able to train others level on that scale, whereas maybe her team will only need achieved, for example. So you can say all of the people in the communication organization, you can use the organization assignment, the organization, you can say everyone who's in the team, the communication teams would need a certain level of proficiency achieved, and then individually that head of communication, so an individual assignment, and say they need to achieve a high level. So you can adjust that value by that assignment. So you might then maybe do it by position, for example. There might be 2 heads of communication, internal and external, for example. So for example, with these items here, if I go edit proficiency value by assignment, I can see all of the assignments and the competency and this minimum required proficiency value. And in this case, this item has been overridden. So maybe for embracing change for department 1, maybe they need something different. So for example, department 1, and that's an organizational assignment for embracing change. Maybe they've got some restructuring going on, and so maybe they need a higher level of proficiency. So using your imagination, that there's a higher level of competency along the top here. So it means you can adjust what people need to achieve based on their roles or their team or how they've assigned themselves across this. And it's a very powerful piece of functionality. Okay, so now I will move on to tracking. So we talk about this competency profile. I'm just going to flick over to our Lisa learner and see what she sees. So we're going to log out. Actually, what I'm going to do is use my 13 side. I'm going to log out of that one. And log in as Lisa. Okay, so this profile hasn't changed across 14, so, and this one's nicely populated for Lisa. So this is what we call a competency profile. And what this is a summary for Lisa about what she has done, what she's been assigned, and her progress towards these. Now, in this case, I can't use my mouse. We've got two types of assignment. We've got directly assigned, so assigned by a manager or an admin, and self-assigned, so items that Lisa has assigned herself. Now we can have different types of display. They show the same information. If there is only, there's one or two assignments, then we see the bar graph. Any more than 3, then it becomes the spider diagram, and then any more than I think 11 or 12, and it comes back to this bar graph, and that's just about usability. That's just, yeah, because there's too many and it would start to look a little bit crazy. So the yellow here, or you can hover over it for accessibility reasons, shows the level of proficiency required, in this case for Lisa, for this particular competency, which is integrity. And this blue area, or this dot here, shows her current achievement. Now, because these competencies can sit in different frameworks and therefore have different scales, there's an average, and that's how it's determined. So even though there's 1, 2, 7 different levels on this, it's averaged it out, so they all look like they're across the same scale. In this case, the shape that we see is just me playing with proficiency to try and create a bat signal. That was just really for my own amusement. But as you hover over them, you can see in this case for confidence and self-control, conceptual and strategic thinking, so both of these 2 items here, there's no value achieved. So Lisa's been assigned these items, but she hasn't gone through and created or completed any content yet. Versus process mapping, which I'll click on here, and remembering that I'm logged in as Lisa, so this is what she would see if she was looking at her progress or what she needs to do. This is where she can see those criteria-based paths. In this case, she has completed it. You can see that she's competent and proficient in this case, how she was assigned it, and how she achieved each of these items. So in this case, she achieved not competent when competency was assigned. Next level was completing this one course. Next level was completing this other course. And you can see additional information if you so wish. In this case, she's completed that criteria-based path and she is complete. Now, in this case, there was also a manual rating. And in this case in particular, Lisa could rate herself. And this interface is the same you see for a manager. I can have my previous rating, and maybe if I want to say competent, you can also have a comment which would be visible to a manager saying, I really enjoyed this competency. Are there any high levels? I'd be interested in doing more around process mapping, for example. So you can have a comment here. Now, as you make all of these changes, and as you go through reviewing each of these, all of these actions are logged, and we'll see in just a moment that reporting functionality. I just want to show you what it looks like when you log in as an administrator. Leave pace. In fact, I need to log in here. So I'm just skipping back to my 14 because it's a nice interface here. So if I log in as a manager of Lisa and go to my team area, I can jump to that competencies profile and view that as her manager. And what that allows me to do is see all the information that Lisa would see. In this case, on this site, we've got those assigned, directly assigned and self-assigned items, which are both the spider diagrams. And because she's been assigned by a position and an organisation, she has 4 graphs here. So depending on the different assignment types, you'll see these different graphs. And what I can do is see that I can assign Lisa more competencies, or I can go through and rate competencies that she's been assigned. So anything that has been specified as allowing a manual rating. And you can see there's quite a few to go through. So I can go through and update these as required. And again, I can have an optional comment. And again, all of these are tracked across the system. Now, if you listen carefully, there's the ice cream truck right outside my house. I'm not sure if you can hear that. Okay, that is tracking competencies. Let's now move on to reporting because I am aware of time. Any questions before I jump into this final part?
There's no active questions, but if anyone has any, please feel free to add them.
Folks, give Matt something to do. Come on. Okay, so report sources. So there are 4 report sources across competencies. And if I go to this create report area, you can see that there are one here on just competencies, and this reports on all of the competency frameworks and all the competencies and the scales used across all of those competencies across the system. So that's a view everything report. The competency assignments report is a summary of all competency assignments without those editing options. So it's kind of a simpler view if you just want to review all the assignments across the site. Competency ratings and competence status are 2 new reports across 14. So competency ratings are just that. So it's all the ratings given and received. So I can create that report. Go. And you can see there's one here. Josh was given competency scale as I was making my slides earlier today. So I was just making sure that I had some content here when I showed this report. So there's any manual ratings given. Now maybe I can do it by time. There we go. So these are the ones that I have been done in the past. So these are all of the competencies and the manual ratings that have been given. And the final report type is the status, which is that activity log that I was talking about. So competency great report. Now this is a really interesting report. I go into competency status. I can see all of the sort of current status of a report. So who the individual is, and then the competency name. Of course, you can edit this report, but what's really nice here is this activity log. And what this shows is all of those actions. So I was talking about everything being reviewed. So here we have just now me unassigning, or early today unassigning this individual as a GP, but her still having that competency assignment and the various ratings. So you can see a log of the history. So if things have been added and removed or changed because of the different assignments, everything is captured, everything is reportable. Okie dokie. That is competencies, not even in a nutshell, that's quite comprehensive. But if you want to find out more, do check out the courses across the Academy. I think Matt posted the link already in the chat. Those competency courses are great, and you might even, I think I did the voiceovers for at least some of the videos, so you never have to miss me again. You can just watch those videos. There's also a number of resources across the community, including the forums. So if you have a question or you want to suggest a feature, you can jump into the community. There's those resources such as that, the Totara Perform ebook, which I think is my next slide. And there's a range of blogs and of course the help documentation that you can go to. So you can go to our website under resources, and near the top of the page is that Totara Perform ebook, and it's definitely worth a look. Beautifully produced and beautifully designed. Any questions while I run this last poll?
I think the poll is the way to go. Yeah.
Okay. A bit quiet today. All right, so I've just joined the poll. This again, completely anonymous, and I'm just wondering if there's any more information that you'd like us to give you, because it's anonymous. We can't reach out directly, but if you need any information, tap us on the shoulder or post in the chat. But it's just to know the kind of what you guys would like in terms of future webinars primarily. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Matt, for keeping control of all of those questions in the chat. I appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who's joined. Hopefully this session met your expectations. If there's anything else that you want us to do a session on or any feedback, please do let us know in chat or via the community or email us directly, and we'll do our best to accommodate. So there are many more sessions available to you. We've got some great customer sessions coming up. Matt, do you want to say anything about those sessions?
I was just about to mention your demo that's coming up, but then you introduced it, so that's good. Yeah, no, we're going to go some behind the scenes with a couple of customers coming up soon. So as you can see on the screen there, we've got Glovo, it's a Spanish company. We've also got Deloitte, talking about their movie-themed LMS. So yeah, come and have a look at those, and you can ask questions to the partners and to the customers who've built those award-winning sites, and you can find out exactly how they did it and any tips or tricks they've learned along the way of building those incredible sites. And yeah, your talent experience demonstration in May, that's the 26th, I think.
That's next week.
I'm going to get a link to that now.
Okay, we'll do Jeanette, and then I will be showing Learn and Engage as well, and that will be all of 14. So we'll be able to showcase some of the functionality that's going to be in 14 outside of what you've had a sneak peek of today. So that would include a centralized notification system, and a few other exciting bits and pieces. And just say these are only 4 of the sessions, just because that 4 lines up nicely. There are many more, so do stay up to date with that events page. We've got plenty running. So thank you so much for those that joined us. I know that there was a lot to get through today and a lot to listen to, so appreciate your time. Thank you again, Matt, and we shall call it a day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Meredith, and thanks everyone for joining today.